Hi everyone, I'm Kit, the tutor for this tutorial. Today we will focus on the replication extension registered report project. You work on the replication extension of classic LeBel article. You have been assigned that article already. So now we start. So let's start with the project workflow. Flow diagram, as you can see here. Replication extension assignment consists on two parts. The first part includes the Qualtrics survey. So Qualtrics is a survey site, a pretty popular one. The coming week tutorial will be on Qualtrics. The first part also includes the introduction, including the target article analysis, effect size calculations, and power analysis, which can you talk about this in the last tutorial. Then in part 2, you will have to work on the method and the results based on similar data, randomly generated data. So after the first submission, you will receive external feedback, our comments from the teaching assistants and the instructor, Phoebe, as well as peer review from other students. This is followed by pre-tests by classmates to test if there's any error in the Qualtrics. Then you revise and submit the final version of the registered report. So it seems that some of you are confused about the requirements of the RL assessment and the replication extension. Sorry, we were not clear enough. Let me clarify. So for the RL assessment, which you should have submitted first draft by Sunday already, assess the replication target, pre-registration of the RL, the RL manuscript publication of preprint, and it should be done in a team of 4. However, for replication extension, that's a different target. So we will have different target articles for the RL assessment and replication extension. You work on a stage 1 registered report in a group 2. You have been, and we work on the RL assessment first. And the deadline for the RL assessment final version is on October 11th. So after completing RL assessment, you will work on the replication extension. Hopefully, you were able to transfer skills or knowledge learned from the RL assessment to the replication extension project. And one more thing, the replication extension project is done in a group of 2 instead of 4. So today we will focus on the introduction, method, and supplementary. So these are the deadlines that might remind you of these deadlines. Please be aware of this. So please submit the replication extension part 1, which means Qualtrics, the introduction, article analysis, effect size calculations, by 25th of October, 2359, which means 11:59 p.m. This will be a Sunday. This is followed by the part 2 of the replication extensions, which includes method and results based on similar data on November 8th. This is followed by replication extension peer review. The deadline is 15th of November. And please submit the final version on December 13th. Time of all deadlines are 2359, which means 11:59 at night on Sundays. By the way, if you have a question, it would be much better for you to ask on weekdays instead of weekends. But I mean, I will try to answer on weekends too, but it would be better to ask on weekdays. So these are the important links. You probably have received the Google Doc files for the replication extension already. These files are based on our main manuscript and supplementary template. So as you can see, these are the add tables there, which means which group you are in, which project you are responsible for, and some other links. So for more relevant resources, please click on this link here. I will show you now. So 3D website has a lot of resources, as you can see. Some examples from last year, 2019. Replication-Extension guide, Algebra movie guide, effect size guide, etc. Cautious guide, peer review templates, and main manuscript templates, and supplementary templates. So please check this out. So please work on the replication extension without templates provided on a Google Doc from the beginning to finish. You may deviate, you may adapt, you may add new things from our templates, but our templates provide clear directions of what information content you should include. So that's a template for the main manuscript as well as a template for the supplementary. Please check our replication guide and extensions guide as well. Here, there are 2 links here. So feel free to comment, ask questions, or make suggestions to our templates or guides. We appreciate comments, feedback, or questions from students. This will help us improve our templates and improve our guides. That would be helpful. So now, first part of this tutorial, I'll talk about the introduction. For the main manuscript, you will first start with an introduction. First, describe the phenomenon in terms of independent variable and dependent variables, with reference to theories and concepts. Please describe the original article design and finding. Then this is quite important. You need to justify why a replication of the article is important. Some key reasons may include absence of direct replication. Direct replication means closely repeating the method and analysis. There may be some conceptual replications. But for the replication target we chose, there is no direct replication. Another key justification may be theoretical and practical impact. Just try to check if there are theoretical articles related to the phenomenon in the article, as well as possible practical implications articles. Some of the included articles have health, policy, and environmental implications. Please try to check. And another justification is cost-benefit analysis, which means that we expect the benefit of the replications to be larger than the cost. The benefits includes ensure the finding is reliable, preventing waste of resources or time building on unreliable findings if the original timing turned out to be a false positive. You may also consider replication value decision model, which is based on the value of being certain about an effect or claim, and the certainty of the phenomenon or claim given the available evidence that we currently have. So for some articles you replicate, there may be follow-up controversies, mixed findings, low findings, or even findings in opposite directions. So for those articles with such controversies or opposite findings or low findings, the replication value is actually quite high. So please check if there are such follow-up articles with such controversies. You may search on Google Scholar using keywords such as debate, controversies, as well as review, meta-analysis regarding the phenomenon. So let me show you an example now. This is a great example from last year. The students related the phenomenon to theories of concepts from different fields related to self-interest, economics, evolutionary theory, behaviorism, psychoanalysis, etc. They also relate the phenomenon to relevant findings, such as in this case, as you can see, most of the general public of the United States consider other Americans to be concerned with their own interests than helping others. It's good to cite relevant findings. This is followed by discussion of controversies regarding self-interest, which is great. The students cited 2 studies regarding self-interest in political voting and public opinions. Great job here. However, it's better to review the more and updated references. So I'm one of the many authors trying to improve students' work, and we submit this to a journal, stating self-interest as a weak predictor of voting and public opinions would be more accurate instead of saying low or very weak effect. So please be aware of the very recent literature here. Please try to check this recent literature. And as mentioned, please, in general, please refrain from using the phrase no effect. You may use minimal effect, words like this, or you may say a certain article failed to find support for a significant effect. And then the students described the effects of the original of the target article and the implication of the article. The students also stated the replication plus extension goes clearly here. So a close replication of the overestimation effects of self-interest, and the extension here is intensity of the vested interest, where they affects the overestimation bias. So pretty simple and clear. Then this is followed by the justification of choice of study for the replication. The students mentioned the Google Scholar count, citation count, 443 at that time, to indicate the level of impact. They also mentioned how the article challenged rational choice theory, which is a prominent theory in economics, contribute to the theoretical debates regarding self-interest, social interest, procedural fairness, and common good, as well as past policy support. This shows the important implications of this article. It's great to mention the contributions of the article. As you can see here, they also cited some massive studies on political attitudes related to self-interest. Great. A suggestion here, it would be good to mention more about cost-benefit analysis and replication value issue model, which we mentioned a few slides ago. The student does most discussion here on the implications, particular norm of self-interest in different settings, domains, language norms, institutional design, management practice. Again, pretty clear. And this is great. The students also discuss the findings from another article that are contradictory to the replication target. And this shows that there are uncertainties regarding the finding. It shows the replication value is high. They discussed the possible explanations of the contradictory findings, which is great. Here, the contradicting finding article is Ivy and Dunning. They demonstrated great critical thinking and understanding of the differences between Ivy and Dunning and Mueller and LeBel between these 2 articles. So in your project, please check if there are follow-up studies with mixed findings, null findings, inconclusive findings, or contradictory findings. And the student did a really great job there. Discuss and given possible explanations for such contradictory findings. After that, I'll move on to the main manuscript guide on the original hypothesis and findings and registration and open science. So you will need to provide the background information and reasons for the hypothesis. The hypothesis should be directional, comparing different conditions. Then you report the effect size with confidence intervals of the original findings. So some articles reported this statistics, the effect size with CIs. However, some of the articles, especially the older one, do not report these statistics. You will need to calculate these statistics by yourself if the articles do not provide the effect size and confidence intervals. This may be based on the mean or standard deviation or T statistics or F statistics provided. And I think you discussed this already in last tutorial. After that, then you provide registration and open science information, which includes open science framework link. So you should have an OSF account by now. If not, please register the account, as well as the folder link for the raw data, our GMO3 files folder, supplementary link as well. First, I will show you a great example from a student's project last year. Students described the goal of the study, which is presenting an organization scenario to test the effect of default on organ donation preferences. This is called a default effect, with important implication in health medical setting. The student stated the independent variable, preconditions, opt-out, opt-in, and neutral. And the dependent variable, donation agreement rates. So there's a relationship between the IV and the DV. They also reported the results clearly, which includes the slope, standard error, p-values, odds ratio, and 95% confidence intervals, which Chunyu discussed in the last tutorial. So please ensure the reporting is in APA style. For example, here as you can see, the p-values and odds ratio are italic. The students also reported the required sample size to detect this effect with 95% or more power. Here, the power is 96. So you will need to provide more detail regarding power analysis in the method and supplementary session, which I will discuss later. For most of our target articles, we aim for at least 95% power, which means that there's a 95% chance that we can detect the effect if there's an effect. Here, the students provided a table of the hypothesis, and this is quite clear. As you can see, they compare between the conditions, opt-out condition and opt-in condition, as well as neutral low default condition and opt-in condition in terms of the donation agreement rates with directional hypothesis. As you can see, significantly higher donation agreement rate in the opt-out condition comparing to the opt-in condition. And here as well, this is good, and this is what you should do. Here, directional hypothesis. You would also need to include a session on pre-registration and open science. So this is quite simple. Just follow our template and then provide the important links for OSF pre-registration raw data, transform data, geometry analysis files, R or ARMA that code outputs with the ground folder link, as well as open science disclosures information and supplementary link. Just place the links in the hidden areas, then it's good enough. Now the second part, I'll discuss the method. Now we move on to the method. The method session consists of a session on power analysis, which is to determine the sample size required to detect the smallest effects in the original article, the study we plan to replicate. This is followed by sample comparison between the original and the replication. Then you should describe design and procedure specifically and clearly. By that I mean, this lists all the factors, all the degrees with dimensions or levels, and the design of the study. Whether it is within subject design, between subject design, for example. Please explain the manipulations and scenarios clearly and specifically with examples. Please describe the dependent variables and measures. Specifically, please state the number of points in a scale and what do they represent. What do the upper bound value represent, and what does the lower bound value represent? And please describe and justify the deviation of the replication from the original study, if there is such deviation. You should also classify the replication closeness to the original based on LeBel et al. 2018. They provided a taxonomy, which is really great. I will talk about LeBel et al. 2018 in later slides. I also mentioned the classification in tutorial 1. So most of our replications are going to be very close replications, and some of them are close replications. So this is a really great power analysis template provided by Guy Pochillo on Twitter. We appreciate that. So please provide a session on power analysis and participants in the method session. So first, you need to specify the tool used for the power analysis. Ideally with version number, so please include the version number as well. Here they don't. It doesn't have the version number, but please provide the version number and give a reference for that version. You may use geometry, G power, or L to conduct a priori power analysis, which you demonstrate in the last tutorial. You can revisit that if you want. Then you specify the test used, dependent variable and independent variable. There are often several effect sizes or hypotheses in the original study. Because power analysis should be based on the smallest effect size from the original article study that you plan to replicate. Then please specify the parameters you entered for your power analysis. For example, here 80% power, but here we aim for 95% instead of 80. Allocation ratio 1:1, which means an example is the sample size of group 1 is 32, the sample size of group 2 is 32. For such cases, the allocation ratio is 1:1, which you use for your F test, alpha 0.05, decided. This states your minimal sample size required to detect the effect at 95% power, which means there's a 95% chance of detecting the effect if there is. Your target sample size should be larger, slightly larger than the minimal sample size calculated from G power GMO3 or L to account for potential participant exclusions. We will touch on participant exclusion slides. For example, if the power analysis shows the result, you need minimal sample size of 300. You probably need layer to maybe 350 to be safe, as there will be some participants excluded based on pre-planned inclusion-exclusion criteria. So this is an example, a sample comparison between the original and the replication. I'll click on this link now. By last year's student example, this is really run by this group. As you can see, what does this table consist of? The original article, column, and the replication. They use Amtrak samples, which is a crowdsourcing site, pretty commonly used in judgment decision making. Sample size, very often the replication sample size is much larger than the original one. As you can see, the original study one only at 54, original study only at 81. This is where you should put in the target sample size. Geographical origin. So the original article did not provide this information. Here, the geographical origin of the amateur workers are US Americans. Gender, not provided in the original. The older articles, most of them do not provide gender or age. Here, these two numbers. By the way, you won't actually collect the data at the sample asset. You will only work on stage 1 register recall. So for this, like median age, average age, or age range, just feel free to leave it back. But please fill in the medium location. Then this will be done in Amtrak, switchman computers online. And the compensation rate, again, just fill in nominal payment and the year. It's 2020. And this is a pretty simple table. This is another example from last year, one at L 2019. So what did the student do? They specified the factors and dimensions, conditions of each factor, which is great. However, a problem here, the student didn't specify which factor is within factor and which factor is between factor. Within factor, which means within subject, which means the subjects fill in all the conditions, and between subject means that the participants fill in some or one of the conditions. So in your project, please specify this clearly. So this is a great example of a scenario table by Wong and L 2019. So in that replication, this is the psychophysical lumping replication in which one of the teams will actually assess. We just posted our preprint on Open Science Framework and ResearchGate recently, and I'm part of this project. And this is a good example of the scenario table by the students. Just really great job. Here, 8 scenarios and specific information regarding system reliability, rewrite 8, also etc. So if possible, it would be better to use tables to explain something, obviously you need to type words, you need to use paragraphs, but for some cases, tables are much clearer for the readers to understand than non-tests. The students then describe the measure. Just specify the scale. Here, as you can see, what does 0 mean? It means extremely low benefit in this case. What does 8 mean? It means extremely high benefit. You need to specify the lower bound value. What does it mean? And the upper bound value. Students specify this clearly. They also provide example questions for each dependent variable and comprehension check as well. Here, the first question is whether it's representing blank, yes or no, binary question, and how much they were willing to delay the camp if they were given $5 with 0 to 5. So the example questions and the comprehension check, which is whether the participants understand the scenario. So they will be given a task to read, and after the task, they will be asked several questions. Here's an example. So I actually showed this slide already in the tutorial 1. So this is LeBel et al. 2018 replication design closest classification table. So for your projects, some design phases may not be exactly the same with slight changes. So if most of the phases are similar with physical setting and context being different, you still classify that as a very close replication. There may be, for example, there may be some slight wording change in the IV statement line and DV statement line. Like we may not be able to obtain the exact materials. Although we have been trying to contact the authors, some of the articles are many years ago, and it's kind of hard for them to find the original statement line, the exact statement line, for example, the pictures. But we try to be as close as possible with the given information they provided. So it could be similar, but it's not too different. So you have the option to 3 options, same, similar, or different. So if most of the design phases are the same or similar, with maybe 2 being different, procedure details, physical setting, or contextual variables being different, contextual variables or design phases that are beyond the experimental control, like language time, for sure. We control that. Then this is still a very close replication. So most of our projects are very close replications, in which we don't make substantial deviations from the original. We try to be as close as possible, given the available information. In reality, exact replication is unlikely. It's very hard to happen. But very close replication, close replication, common. This is a replication design classification. So Cameron, Brick, and a few researchers, including me, are wrapping up this last year project, and this is a table of replication closeness. It's quite clear. As you can see, most of this is same or similar. Some of this are slightly different, different. But that's the variables are different. Here's that thing are different. The original studies use the questionnaire pack, because but in the replication we use the computer online set and perk. I'll put it. So as you can see, most of this is same or similar. So this is classified as a very close replication. It will provide this if there is. So now we move on to the extensions. By extensions, I mean that you add something to the replication, and adding something to replication can have important implications for better understanding of the phenomenon you want to investigate. It doesn't need to be super local. It can be just small changes, but small changes can be meaningful. So to design your replications, you choose one of these three options. The first one, you add an additional dependent variable. This is relatively simple. This may be an additional evaluation, attribution, judgment question, or binary choice question, or something like a behavioral intention question, such as willingness to play. You may also add an well-validated, well-established individual difference scale. This should be done in the beginning of the survey. This may be belief in theory. I use for the bias blind spot replication extension as predictors of the phenomenon. So please provide here reasonable theoretical justifications by first explaining what the individual difference scale is, what has it predicted, what are the previous findings of the individual scale, and how it may be associated with the effect. So for scales in judgment decision making, this is an important, like a very useful one, SJDM.ROIG. I'll click on it now. They have decision-making measures, attitudes measure, cognitive ability, personality, etc. They have in total over 200 in different individual difference measures that are commonly used well established in judgment and decision-making research. So you want to know more, please click on the link yourself, and you may be able to find an individual difference scale that would be useful and maybe impactful for the replication. And then you may add an additional condition with slight changes. Most important, no expected harm to the participants. This may be as simple as a control or neutral condition. Sometimes this may increase the required sample size to detect that. You may check this link for more information. So extensions to avoid, please do not add reaction time extension or things that are very difficult to measure or test on context. We'll be using context or survey sets. And then please avoid gender, age, demographic difference, or cultural difference kind of extension. This can be meaningful, but in this project, we don't want to be overly complicated with this. Please don't add too many additional conditions to compass three-way, four-way interactions, as there will be way more participants needed to detect the effect. Interactions require more participants to test the effect at a high statistical power. And in such cases, it becomes kind of a conceptual replication with extension. So we aim for a direct, very close replication. We also want to avoid building more compact model with two or more mediators or motivated mediation or structured equation modeling, etc. I think this goes beyond what we expect in an undergraduate course. And this is not a direct replication anymore. You add too many things to the replication. So this is an example from the guy, from the extension guy. This is a tab from a slide last year. First, you may add an additional dependent variable. This is simple. Apart from asking participants for regret, and this is the action in investor regret by Kalman Chester, 1982. The hypothesis is that people would associate more regret with the action compared to inaction. And in this case, apart from asking participants which investor will experience more regret, given action versus inaction negative outcomes, the perception of the social norm. Direction here, as you can see, a DV item. Please rate what you think most people would do in that situation. The prediction is that more people would perceive social norms as inaction rather than action, compared to 50-50 random choice splits. This can be done with binomial seed or chi-square. And here, this is an individual difference predictor. So action stage orientation is added. Action orientation refers to the tendency to take action and make changes to move from the present stage to advance to future goal stage. Whereas stage-oriented people tend to have more ruminative thoughts about alternative goals and less likely to take action on changes. The prediction is that action-oriented people tend to associate action with less intense regret and action with more stronger regret. State-oriented people associate action with stronger regret and action with less intense regret. So what can be done is correlation analysis. This is a individual difference scale extension. Pretty good one. A pretty simple one to implement too. And then here you can also consider adding an additional condition. So in the original, there's only a loss condition, which means the investor lost money. However, here a gain condition is added to test if that influences the feelings of joy. The prediction is that action would be associated with joy, with more joy in gain as well, compared to inaction. However, this kind of design is more complicated and requires more participants. So please consult freely the course instructor you will want to implement this kind of design, additional condition and design. And this generally requires more participants. So now we move on to supplementary. For the supplementary, please follow this template. You may deviate a bit from the template, but this gives you a good directions of what sessions you should include. For the following slides, I will talk about the templates. In the open science disclosure section of the supplementary, please include the length of the data and code and OSF. This means both the raw data, code, script, syntax, geometry, out, etc., analysis files. And please include a length of pre-registration and the project study designs. Just enter the links in our templates. After that, our templates include 4 statements. So first, data collection were completed before analysis of the data. During the STEM methods, we actually won't collect the data. However, as mentioned, we will submit your stage 1 registered report with the help of collaborators that undergo peer review, maybe make some changes, then collect the data, and then analyze the real data. And you state all the collected indications are reported, all the data inclusion security specified, all the variables collected are reported and included in the provided data. And then you will need to analyze the original article. Please try to report specifically and transparently. Given the information provided, I understand some information may not be provided in the original article. So try to report as much as possible based on what is available in the original article. You have to indicate the type of design, which may be experimental manipulations, one sample experiment, correlational. Most of the replication targets stop experimental manipulation. Then you specify the number of conditions by number of conditions of the independent variable, what each independent variable is, the levels, dimensions, or conditions of each independent variable, and specify if the independent variable is between subject or within subject. As there may be mixed designs mean that one IV is in between subject and one IV is within subject. So mix of both within subject and between subject. Please also indicate whether the participant randomly assigned participant definitions. And if it's not random, what kind of assignment was used? For one example experiment, please explain the comparison. This may be to a midpoint of the scale, or in some case, presenting scenarios of 2 actors. For example, the Kahneman and Chapsky 1982 study, in which comparing which investor will experience more regret given action versus inaction, or which person would have better morality, etc. For the independent variable, it needs to be a measure, a key construct. For example, temporal distance, past versus the future, perspective, self versus others, or whether it's positive outcome versus negative outcome. Please label the conditions, not with condition 1 or condition 2. This is a lot helpful. Please label the conditions with meaningful labels. For example, positive outcome condition versus negative outcome condition. It would be a great label. Please provide a full description of the manipulation in each condition. To provide information about the scenario presented to the participants. This is a sample. As you can see, that's a control condition and an experimental condition. So please data highlighted here states whether the design is within subject or between subject. Here, the dependent variable is the evaluation of the investment decision. As you can see, specific DV item, the evaluate quality of the investment decision on 0 to 6, lower bound, very bad, of about 6. Very good. And this is here. This is a sample. And then for this, it's very similar, but instead there are 2 experimental conditions: a positive outcome condition and a negative outcome condition. Positive outcome means win or gain of money, and negative outcome means loss of money. Very similar. Again, same theory, quality of condition. And this is more complicated. I will click on the link now. This is from our templates. As you can see, there's an individual different scale extension. We mentioned action state orientation scale, as well as 2 independent variables. Here, you need to enter the factor 1, whether it's within factor 2, independent variable 2, whether it's between them, and what conditions for each independent variable. For example, positive outcome, negative outcome, no outcome, control. And then the IV2 is self versus other. Just enter the condition name in the highlighted areas. And this is quick here. The DV title with DV, an example of the DV item, lowest bound meaning and highest bound meaning. And you may add an extension. But for your replications, unless we agree, don't add too many extensions. Mostly just one. I mean, one extension is enough. Maybe for some projects you can add 2, but most of them just 1. So I'll go back to the slide. And then this is quite important as well. Please check if there's comprehension check. For example, what is a comprehension check? There may be several questions to assess whether the participants understand the scenario or manipulation correctly, in order to move on to the next questions, or to be included in the final data analysis. This may be part of the inclusion-exclusion criteria. An attention check. This is to test if the participants were paying attention, focusing on the surveys when answering the questions, but not simply randomly clicking buttons. This may be as simple as please choose options 3 if you're paying attention. A manipulation check is to test the effect of a manipulation, whether it's effective in an experimental design. Some of these are not present in the original article. So if not, you remove the session. And for the dependent variables of the original, state all the DVs and highest question or scale, and the reported reliability of the DV if the original article reported. Very often in session not reported the reliability in the older articles. You may report the DV plus measure in the form of a table here, like just like this. The table consists of a column for the dependent variable and how the DVs are measured. In this case, actual willingness to donate blood This is a binary choice question, yes or no, for 2 conditions. Would you do label if you would pay $50 or you would not pay, yes or no? Theory 2, the estimated percentage of others who would do label. Hence the question is, the measure is percentage here. Comes from 0 to 100. And this is quite clear. Again, please try to use tables if possible. The supplementary should also report the original article results. First, what is the sample size before and after exclusion? This states why the participants were excluded. However, participant exclusion and why the reasons they were excluded may not be reported in the original. So it just states it was not reported if that is the case. Then you report the age mean and the standard deviation, gender, location as specific as possible, city or university or the country if it's provided, or the sample type, undergraduate students sample, online sample, general population, specific population, etc. Again, some of this information, particular age, mean as D, and gender may not be reported. In such cases, just mention those information are not provided in the original. Then you report its experimental design. Just to check if they reported descriptions of each condition. The number of participants, mean, and SD. For inferential statistics, do they report the t-test result? Yes, please report it here in the supplementary. For the 3 conditions of a single study, or 2 IVs or more, in post-hoc comparison tests, and indicate if any multiple comparison corrections were used. This also reported degrees of freedom, p-values, as well as the effect size and CIs provided in the original article. This is an example from last year. Good example. The students reported the test used, which is 2 times 2 times 2 within subject and over. And the key main effects and key comparison, reading conditions, more beneficial, small camp, large camp. With F statistics here, key value here. However, the students did report mean, but they didn't report SD. It would be better to add notes or statement to indicate that the original article did not provide standard deviation, best size, and confidence in the book. So this is for one sample experiment. Again, number of participants per choice, how many participants choose option A, for example. And what is the proportion of participants choosing option A? For example, count is 150, 75% of the participants choose option A out of 200 participants. So please report the statistics results, which might be in chi-square or binomial set, as well as the degrees of freedom, p-values, and the reported effect size, which may be chi-square, which may be Quatermain degree, which you mentioned in the effect size confidence interval sky. For correlational study, please report the descriptives of the items or scales, and the number of participants, degrees of freedom, correlation coefficient, and confidence intervals. Is it Spearman or Pearson, and p-values. Now, for this part, Chin discussed this in detail in tutorial 2. If we may revisit his tutorial, even if you attended, it would be great to revisit the tutorial. The tutorial 2 is already uploaded on Open Science Framework. So when you're actually working on the project, just revisit his tutorial, and this will help you really well. As I mentioned, some original articles do not report the effect size. And the effect size calculations of the original study are very important for power analysis. To determine the sample size required, you will need to include our code for the calculation of effect size, confidence intervals. There are many packages available for calculations. You may check out our guide for how to find package for calculating effect size and CIs. Our effect size, confidence intervals, and power analysis guides. In general, please do not use online calculators due to the lack of reproducibility, and the link may be back soon. And there may be some errors in those calculators. Please report 95% CIs for long-squared effect size, such as cohens D, and 90% CIs for partial eta squared and eta squared. You may use G-Power, Geometry, or OWL for your power analysis. Please report the input, the code, and output for your power analysis. And based on the calculated effect size, find a minimal sample size required to detect the smallest effect size with 95% power. And this is a summary of what you should do. As mentioned, check Chin Yeung tutorial 2 for detail. This is an example from last year. Now I'll click on the link. As you can see, this is page 21. The students provided a pretty clear step-by-step procedure for the power analysis. And this is convenient for the reviewers, for the instructor, for the collaborators, or for other researchers who want to assess the reproducibility of our projects. State what test was used, which file. This is just great transparent practices. How to do that? To provide screenshots, input and output. Both inputs and output are important. Again, steps by step, here. And finally, they provide a summary of power analysis table with sample size required, minimal sample size required to detect the effect at 96% power. And importantly, for the smallest effect, 166 participants were required to detect the effect at 95% power. Here, 200 or more was needed, as there may be participants excluded, slightly higher than 166 tolerated on the power analysis. Now I'll go back to the slide. Now we move on to the materials and scales in the replication. You will need to describe the step-by-step procedure of each experiment. This includes the scenario or instruction. The experimental conditions. What are the conditions? Do participants complete all the conditions, or are they randomly assigned to one of the conditions, as well as measures? Please also mention the functional session, in which participants were asked if they were serious taking a survey, their English proficiency, if they had filled in a similar or same survey before, and if they could cast the hypothesis correctly. This matters, as some participants might be excluded based on answers from the following session. I will talk about inclusion or exclusion criteria in the later slides. And if there's a composite scale, let's say an individual difference scale with 10 items, let's say, or 30 items, let's say. Please state all the items, the number of points, and what does each number of points, the upper bound value, for example, 8, extremely high benefit, or extremely agree, or 0, extremely disagree. What does each lower bound value and upper bound value represents? And this is an example from last year for the materials session. I'll click on the link. So the students first provided the instructions given to the participants. They were given a scenario here. Imagine being the government official and asked to evaluate 4 government programs. Whether all the participants are subject to the scenario, or whether they're randomly assigned. Here they are assigned to one of the conditions. There's several conditions. Experimental condition 1, employment, transportation. Okay. The student lists out all the conditions. And the following session. It's quick here. They also present a sample of the scales used, the 13-point scale. And this is what you should do. Just transparent reporting of the scales and materials. Now we move on to the inclusion-exclusion criteria. So this is from the templates. So as you can see, this criteria is based on proficiency of English, self-report below 5 would be exclusion on a 1.7 scale. But this one is self-report as not being serious, self-report under 4 would be excluded. But those who already get that process, participants who had already seen or done the survey before. Participants who failed to complete the survey, obviously. And in the case, if it's conducted on Mechanical Turk participants not from the United States. You may also include some specific criteria, which may be based on results from attention check, comprehension check, etc. As I mentioned, comprehension check is a test where the participants understand the scenarios clearly. And attention check is a test if the participant was focused and paying attention when they fill in the survey. Let's add a table comparing the original and replication method. This is from our template. For study design, it means number of IVs and number of levels per IVs. And for example, if it uses within subject design, between subject design, or mixed design. Also check if there are procedural differences or specific differences, and information on manipulation in conditions. Importantly, if applicable, just explain the reason for change or deviation from the original. Generally, we try to be as close as possible. However, we may not have the exact human line. We may not have the exact wording. They may not be reported in the original. However, we do try to contact the original authors. And some of them respond really proactively. They provided the original materials. That's a great practice. And this is an example from last year. As you can see, experience compared between study design, there's no difference in that, but an extension question. Or a different scenario. Okay. Sometimes, like the original material, some part of the information may not be reported. For example, the house survey was included in the original, but it's not that important, so it's not included in the replication. Okay. This is pretty clear with explanation for the change, well justified. You may look for more examples from last year. Some of these examples are just excellent, very well done job by the students. Here you click on this link. For an area table. There are 22 examples for you to look for with job postings, final reports, and files, data files, manuscript, supplementary, registration, and the original article link. So this part is very important as well. You will also need to work on a peer review on your case on the replication-extension. This is due on 15th of November. The key goal here is to aim to help your peers improve by providing feedback and suggestions. Should be constructive, which means giving specific advice on what can be done to improve, ideally with some examples to illustrate, and to be comprehensive, which means you cover all the important aspects, such as introduction, methods, results, and supplementary, and conjuncts. Concise, to the point, clear, and understandable, and supportive. No cynical, offensive, or slacky comments. So you may adapt based on our replication extension peer review templates. This link here. So I understand you may not be able to think of questions at this stage. However, once you start working on the replication extension, you will likely experience some challenges. And when you experience challenges, just feel free to post on Slack. Feel free to ask questions so that we can learn from each other. We may not be able to provide the best available answers to all your questions. This is kind of a discussion, but we'll try our best. And I really hope you will do well in this replication project. Thank you. These are the references. And just feel free to ask questions now.